Sometimes, the most gifted people, guided by some unexplainable instinct, stubbornly hide their talents from the world. Some do it out of fear of being misunderstood, others because of pressure, and some simply because it's the easiest way to survive. Grace wasn't one of those who hid. On the contrary, she fought her way through the thick fog of rejection and misunderstanding. At 26, every step she took toward her dreams and passions had to be defended, against her parents, the system, even her closest ones. Grace was born in a remote village buried deep in the Texas plains, where time seemed to stand still. Her family belonged to the Amish community. And any deviation from their strict way of life was seen as rebellion. People there were suspicious even of electricity, let alone books, the internet, or any education outside of the religious kind. She grew up surrounded by silent faces and harsh routines, in a household where faith came before everything. Her parents did their best to provide for 7 children through modest harvests and odd jobs. When the land failed them, the kids simply went hungry. And yet, even the most remote places eventually get visited by the state, Child Protection Services, inspections, reports. One such visit led to a life-changing decision: the children had to be removed. The parents lost custody, and the kids were sent to different foster homes. As the eldest, Grace was separated from her younger siblings and placed in a group home for teens. It was one of those places for kids over 16, too old to be adopted, just waiting to age out of the system, with little hope of finding a new family. The staff were average people, not saints, but not cruel either. They taught, guided, and tried to prepare these teens for the outside world. Grace was quickly labeled a lost cause. Her basic knowledge was lacking, too many years spent working the land. She kept to herself at first, avoiding the other kids. But Grace could read and do math, skills she'd learned as a little girl. And those skills became her escape into books. The group home had a library. It started with simple children's books. But within a year, her reading turned into a deep love of learning, of knowledge in all forms. The other kids didn't bully her too much, though they sometimes mocked her behind her back, or even to her face, calling her country girl. But Aaron, one of the older boys, surprised even himself when he realized the girl from the Amish family was actually beautiful. Now a young woman, Grace still braided her thick light brown hair and wore plain dresses like the ones she grew up in. But her striking blue eyes caught attention, even in a small town. Aaron was respected in the home, bold, athletic, with Native American features and broad shoulders. So the teasing stopped quickly, no one wanted to cross him. Aaron, for his part, was falling hard. He softened around Grace, bringing her flowers, a chocolate bar, helping carry her bag. Everyone saw it. The kids. The staff. Aaron was in love. And because of that, Grace's weirdness slowly stopped being weird. Meanwhile, Grace's mind was awakening. She didn't need tutors. She absorbed complex material with ease, even grasping things that some college grads couldn't. Languages came especially easily: English, Spanish, even Chinese, as if she'd grown up in a multilingual home. By the time the staff realized Grace was a true prodigy, it was almost too late. The moment came during a visit from a German businessman supporting the foster system. Grace greeted him in perfect German. Everyone was stunned. Still, when she left the group home, she wasn't placed in a university. Instead, she was sent to a local technical college to study transportation logistics, the only formal education she would ever receive. By then, her relationship with Aaron had solidified. He trained as a welder, got a job, and eventually opened his own shop. The two moved out of the group home and into an old, run-down apartment slated for demolition. They were waiting to move into a new building. Life together wasn't always smooth, but it was real. Their differences in knowledge and worldview didn't matter. Aaron provided, steady and determined. Grace worked part-time as a janitor in a nearby wood processing plant. She also helped Aaron with finances and paperwork. Their tiny apartment, thanks to Grace's touch, looked like it belonged in a design magazine, cozy and stylish. Soon, they had children, Max and Olivia, born a year apart. When Grace found out she was pregnant, Erin insisted they marry legally. Since she'd been working off the books, she had no maternity leave. But Erin made enough to support them. For the next 6 years, Grace stayed home with the kids. When their old apartment, still not demolished, finally got internet, Grace dove into the digital world. She learned quickly and soon found her siblings, now scattered across the country. Some came to visit, sharing stories of their new lives. It was from one of her brothers that Grace learned their parents were gone. Her father had died in a car crash. Her mother, devastated, disappeared in the Montana mountains. The court later declared her dead. Then tragedy struck at home. Erin seriously injured his leg, a misstrike by his apprentice sent a hammer to his shin, breaking the bone. Self-employed and unable to work, Erin spiraled. Depressed and withdrawn, he barely spoke. Grace sat across from him one day and said firmly, like a loving mother scolding a sulking child, "Erin, enough. You're home. Your leg's healing. That's what matters. While we still have a little money, I'll go back to work as a janitor. You'll stay with the kids." "This is humiliating," he muttered, staring into cold coffee. A man, alive and well, while his wife cleans floors. "First of all," Grace said, "cleaning is a real job. Someone has to keep places tidy. Second, as soon as you're healed, I'll quit. And third, I need this too. I miss working. I want to contribute, even if it's just a little. You're a great dad. You'll handle Max and Olivia just fine. Meanwhile, I'll shake off the dust and get some free cardio with a mop and bucket. My body needs movement too, Erin." Eventually, he agreed. Grace returned to her old workplace, walking the same gait she had so many times before. But things had changed. No more open access. This time, 2 burly security guards blocked her way. "Pass, please," grunted the older one. "Greg? Is that you?" Grace asked, smiling. It was one of the boys from the group home, just a year younger than Erin. "You've really grown up. Why so serious? I used to just walk right in." "Grace. How's life? How's Erin?" The guard's face broke into a warm smile. "We're doing fine," Grace said with a smile. "Living nearby, raising the kids. I'll tell you everything on the way back, just let me through." "I wish I could," Greg sighed. "But things have changed around here. Management changed about a year and a half ago. Now everything's controlled from the head office. A couple named the Carrolls, Stephen and Nancy. Ever since they took over, everything's been tightened. Cameras, reports, oversight. Everyone walks a straight line, including us. That's just how it is." "So how do I get in to see the new management?" "Technically, Stephen's the director. But honestly, it feels like Nancy's just as much in charge. She runs HR now, and getting an appointment with her is no joke. You have to schedule in advance. Still, a meeting with Mrs. Carroll has kind of become a rite of passage." Greg seemed torn, weighing something silently. Then he made up his mind. "Okay, here's what we'll do. Just hold up your old badge like you still work here. Head straight to the admin building, that's where HR is now. If you go through official channels, someone else might snag that opening. I respect Erin. He did a lot for me back at the group home. So go." Grace reached the HR department without trouble. Many of the women she used to work with greeted her warmly, especially those who had once held humble positions and had since risen through the ranks. "Grace, hello," beamed a silver-haired woman in a sharp pantsuit. It was in Silvers, once just a junior staffer, now the head of HR. "Coming back to us?" she asked. "Why not?" Grace smiled. Time to remember what it's like to wield a mop. Unless you've got something else in mind. Unfortunately, no, Anne said, her expression dimming slightly. She clearly didn't like the idea of hiring Grace for a job beneath her. But, she quickly brightened, there is one spot open. Used to be the janitors had to cover both the factory and the offices, now it's just the administrative building and the director's office. Half the work, same pay. But the director needs to approve it personally. What do I need to do to meet him? I'll call his office, Anne said. She dialed quickly and spoke in a hushed tone, then turned back to Grace with a nod. He's in. But be careful. Anne leaned closer, lowering her voice. He's not alone. Nancy's with him, his wife. She's strict. And if she doesn't like someone, she won't hesitate to say no. The Carrolls were practically exiled here, and they don't care much for locals. Stephen used to be on the board at the head office. Head office? Grace asked. Oh, right, you probably haven't heard. While you were away, all the regional wood processing plants got bought up by a big corporation. They've been quietly buying up the whole area. Headquarters is in New York now. Wow, I didn't know. So here's the thing, Nancy doesn't hold any formal title, but she shows up every day with her husband. I guess she's bored. It's like she followed him here like some banished governor's wife, and now the only fun she has is work. She's basically taken over the place. People fear her more than they fear her husband. So make a good impression. On her. I'll do my best, Grace said with a smile. I'm sure you will, Anne replied, and added with a smirk, and if we land a contract with the Chinese investors, we might be seeing some very big changes around here. After finishing the paperwork, Grace headed home to share the news with Aaron. She found him in the kitchen, right where she'd left him that morning. What is it now? She asked gently, changing into her robe and stepping into the kitchen. Still brooding over your leg? No, he sighed. I bathed the kids. They've been out like lights for a while, they ran around in the heat all day. Then why so gloomy? I've got good news. They took me back. Same job, same pay, but half the workload. That's great, he said, though his tone was flat. But it's not the point. What do you mean? I mean we're setting Max and Olivia up for the same life we had. I see it, they're smart. They take after you. And strong like you, Grace said with a warm smile, trying to lift the mood. Aaron nodded proudly. Exactly. And that's what got me thinking. We might be able to make it here, grow old in this dusty town. But the kids? There's no future for them here. Don't get ahead of yourself, Aaron. They're still young. Our job is to give them an education. They'll choose their own paths from there. Remember, we had no choice, no support, no love behind us. Moving to a big city without preparation. That's a hard road. I know, Grace added gently, sitting beside him and wrapping an arm around his shoulders. But you're a great father. And I'm a good mom. We're doing everything we can. And who knows, maybe things will work out. Just like that, he chuckled. Maybe. Haven't we earned a little happiness, she said. There must be something out there, a higher power. Maybe it'll finally send a little luck our way. You and your dreams, Aaron smiled at last. Go on, get some sleep. You've got an early morning. Remember what that's like. Like I ever forgot, especially with our two Energizer bunnies, she laughed. After that talk, Aaron started healing fast. It was as if he truly believed his path wasn't over, that maybe heaven really would listen to his prayers. The moment he could stand again, he was back in the workshop, working harder than ever. Grace returned to her job and, with Anne's help, enrolled the kids in a daycare program affiliated with the company, a sort of unofficial perk. It allowed her to focus on work, knowing her children were safe. After an 8-hour shift, she'd pick them up, grab a few groceries, and head home. Time is a strange thing. When you're bored, it crawls. But then you blink, and weeks turn into months, months into years. Just like that, a year had passed since Grace returned to work. Not once did she complain. For a town like theirs, the pay was decent. Management was strict, but fair. It kept people focused, and gave them a chance to stand out. Important guests from the New York headquarters visited regularly: investors, board members, foreign specialists. On those days, the plant was scrubbed top to bottom. Only essential workers were allowed to remain on site. Grace wasn't one of them. The day before a visit, she'd deep clean the administrative building and head home, sometimes for several days. Why Nancy Carroll was so obsessed with removing non-essential staff during high-profile visits remained a mystery. Maybe she didn't want anyone talking out of turn, or maybe she was embarrassed by the provincial staff. Still, the visits always brought good news: new investments, expanding operations, even breaking ground on a second processing line. The staff were notified well in advance of the upcoming visit from their potential Chinese partners. Grace welcomed the news. It meant 2 bonus paid days off afterward. Perfect timing, Max's birthday was coming up. Grace had a special surprise planned: a small laptop so he could finally explore the internet on his own. Curious and bright, Max had outgrown his toys. Since Aaron's workshop was full of delicate equipment, Grace had hidden the laptop at work. But in the chaos of preparing for the big visit, she completely forgot to bring the gift home. She remembered the next morning, furious at herself. Desperate, she asked Nancy directly for permission to stop by the building and grab the present. Nancy shut her down instantly. "You're not to come near this facility for 2 days, she barked. "If you show up, you're fired." Grace had no choice. But she wasn't about to ruin her son's birthday. For the first time, she decided to break the rules. Luckily, Greg was on duty. Now the head of security, he was scanning logs when Grace arrived. With a discreet nod and a wink, he quietly gave the order to let her in, just this once, for Max. Doing her best to stay quiet and unnoticed, Grace slipped into the administrative building like a shadow. But just like in the kind of movie where everything goes wrong at the worst possible moment, she fumbled with her keys, and that's when the grand double doors swung open. Right in front of her stood the entire high-level delegation. Frozen in place, Grace knew immediately, from the look on Nancy's face, that this could easily end in a firing, or at the very least, a severe reprimand. Stephen looked equally surprised. Judging by his tight expression, the meeting had already been going poorly. But one of the guests, a cheerful man in his 50s, dressed in a light cotton summer suit, reacted differently. He stepped forward, greeted Grace politely, and began speaking quickly into his phone. Within seconds, it became clear what the problem was: the talks were falling apart due to a lack of a qualified translator. The conversation was being filtered through a clumsy phone app, which mangled the sentences and lost all nuance. Tension hung in the air. "I understand you," Grace suddenly said, in flawless Mandarin. "There's no need for the translator. It's not doing the job well. I can help." The man blinked in astonishment, then broke into an even wider smile. "You're serious?" he asked in Chinese. Turning to his assistant, he said, "Zihao, I think heaven has sent us a translator. Bring the document with the key contract terms." "Yes, sir," Zihao replied, handing Grace a page filled with a confusing mix of Chinese and broken English. "Can you read what's written in my native language?" asked the businessman, now clearly hopeful. "Of course," Grace replied calmly, taking the page. "I'm a wealthy man," the businessman explained. "I would gladly pay for your services. Your management had hired a translator from New York, but he got into trouble on the way. Apparently, he got drunk, caused a scene at the airport, and was detained. The entire negotiation was hanging by a thread." From the corner of her eye, Grace saw Stephen and Nancy exchange stunned glances. They looked like school kids who'd just seen a ghost. And honestly, that was good news, because now, with the janitor suddenly becoming the only one capable of saving the deal, her chances of avoiding punishment had just skyrocketed. Grace read the contract notes aloud and then translated them into clear, precise English. "Stephen," she said, "the document states that you're expected to launch the second production line within a month. It also specifies that only premium-grade lumber is acceptable, as Mr. Lin is acting as a supplier for a luxury home-building company in China. That means no defects, no knots, no mold, nothing but top-tier quality." Then she turned to Mr. Lin and said in Chinese, "I've translated everything." "Excellent. And what do your colleagues say?" Mr. Lin asked. "Stephen, Nancy, Mr. Lin is waiting for your response." Nancy was the first to recover. Composed, but clearly flustered, she chose her words carefully. "Please tell Mr. Lin," she said, "that we are fully committed to meeting all obligations in the contract. Furthermore, if the agreement is signed, we will complete the second production line not in 1 month, but in just 2 weeks." Grace relayed the message with ease. Mr. Lin thanked her with a deep nod, and extended an invitation to join the rest of the meeting in the conference room. "I should ask Mr. Carroll for permission," Grace said politely, then turned to Stephen. "Mr. Lin has invited me to assist for the rest of the negotiations, but I won't be able to stay long. It's my son's birthday today." "Of course, Grace," Stephen nodded. "But please come in early tomorrow. Our guests will be here for 1 more day, and I'd like to avoid any further language issues." The delegation left the city the next day, all contracts signed. For the Carrolls, it was a major victory. But for Grace, it was a personal triumph. As soon as the plane took off, Nancy and Stephen, visibly relieved, invited her to the director's office. "I can't even begin to thank you," Nancy said first, as they all took their seats. "We hired a top-tier interpreter from New York, but you wouldn't believe what happened. He got drunk before his flight, had a panic attack about flying, started a scene at the gate, and got pulled by airport security. Never even made it on the plane. This deal meant everything, not just for the plant, but for us personally. Now we finally have a shot at returning home and reclaiming our positions on the corporate board." Stephen will resume his old seat. "I'll continue as his trusted advisor." "You're incredible," Stephen added, visibly impressed. "Where did you learn to speak Mandarin like that?" "Self-taught," Grace said modestly. But then she remembered her conversation with Aaron. This was not the time to downplay her strengths. "I also speak fluent Spanish and German. The thing is, my husband and I never had the chance to earn degrees or certificates." "What does your husband do?" Stephen asked. "He's a gifted blacksmith and welder," Grace answered proudly. "Half the custom gates in our local subdivision are his work. He's got golden hands." Stephen and Nancy exchanged another look. Then Nancy voiced the thought they both clearly shared. "I'll admit, I misjudged you. I thought you were just another janitor. But you're a prodigy. And at the same time, you're not afraid of hard work or big responsibilities. So I won't beat around the bush. We want to offer you and your husband new jobs. In New York. Don't worry, we'll cover all the relocation costs. And the salary, well, let's just say it will be more than enough for you to buy your own home in the city within 2 or 3 years." She paused, then added with warmth, "We have a large country home in Connecticut, with a cozy guest house. It will be yours for as long as you need it. And once you get to know us, you'll see, beneath these business suits, we're just people. Honest. Reliable. Open. Sleep on it. If you're in, get ready to move in a month or 2, once we wrap things up here." "My answer is yes," Grace said without hesitation. "Sometimes you have to recognize an opportunity when it comes."